People were still clapping when the room went quiet, like the air had been pulled away. Pastor Daniel stood on the stage in his sharp gray suit, a bright smile on his face. Beside him, Evelyn, his wife, held a microphone with both hands. Her fingers shook. The chandeliers above them sparkled like little suns. Cameras from the church media team pointed at her. Phones were up. Everyone was waiting to hear the testimony. Evelyn took a breath that seemed to scrape her throat. "I am pregnant," she said. The church burst into cheers. Drums rolled. Someone blew a trumpet. People danced in the aisles. Pastor Daniel lifted his hands and said, "Hallelujah." Evelyn didn't hand the microphone back. She stared at the front row at one person there who never sat in the front. Michael. He was the new live-in house worker, tall, strong, with calm eyes. In his clean white shirt he sat very still like a tree in a storm. Evelyn's lip trembled. "The father," she said, voice small but in every speaker, "is Michael." Every sound died. The microphone hummed on the stand. A spoon slipped from someone's hand and hit the floor like a bell. Pastor Daniel's smile turned into a straight line. He looked from his wife to Michael, then back. The band stopped. The red light on the camera blinked steady. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far away and began to draw closer. Before anyone could move, Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut as if bracing for rain. "I am so sorry," she whispered into the mic. The doors at the back of the church swung open. Two men from the media team rushed in, breathless, waving their hands. "The live stream is still on," one of them shouted. "We're still live." And that is where everything cracked. This story did not begin on that stage. It began a long time before, in a quiet kitchen that always smelled like lemons and soap. It began with a woman who was lonely and a man who was busy, both trying to do good things, and a young worker who thought kindness was the only safe thing he could give. Brooksville was not a big city, but the church there was big. People came from all over to hear Pastor Daniel preach. He spoke with a warm voice that wrapped around your heart like a blanket. He gave to the poor. He prayed with people in the hospital. He raised money to fix roofs and send kids to school. He was famous for being a good man. He was also busy all the time. His wife, Evelyn, was kind and gentle. She loved to cook for the youth choir and write little notes on sticky paper to put on the fridge. She smiled with her whole face. But late at night, when the lights were off and the house was quiet, she would sit on the edge of the bed and hug a pillow. She and Daniel had wanted a baby for years. People asked her every month, "Any news?" They did not mean to hurt her, but the words were like small stones piling up. One day the church hired a live-in worker to help at the parsonage and the church grounds. His name was Michael. He was 27, with strong arms from lifting chairs and carrying bags, and a face that looked like it had learned to listen before it spoke. He was from a small town with one long road and tall mango trees. His mother had taught him two things: work with clean hands, and kindness is never wasted. He kept these like coins in his pocket. From the first week, Michael made life smoother. He fixed the gate that always stuck. He carried heavy boxes of rice into the kitchen. He raked leaves into neat lines. He drove Evelyn to the market when the church driver was late. He waited near the car and never tried to join her conversation with the women selling peppers. He said "yes, ma'am," and "no, ma'am," and "please, ma'am," and he meant all of it. Kindness began to fill the house like a soft light. But kindness, when mixed with loneliness, can grow into something else if nobody guards the door. Evelyn tried to keep the doors guarded. She was careful. She wore a cardigan over her dress even in the warm kitchen. She kept her tone light. She talked about the pantry and the shopping list. She told Michael stories about little kids at church and how they loved extra icing on cupcakes. She did not tell him how she cried sometimes in the shower so her husband would not hear. Pastor Daniel did not mean to be absent. He was on a mission to help so many people. There were hospital visits at midnight, board meetings at dawn, youth camps in other states, relief drives after floods. He kept saying, "After this Sunday I'll rest." But Sundays came and went like waves, and every wave pulled him back out to sea. One rainy evening the power went out. The generator coughed and died. The house fell into dark. Thunder rolled. Evelyn lit a candle and went to the pantry to find a flashlight. Her foot slid on a wet patch by the back door. She stumbled. The candle tipped. In that instant, Michael caught her, one arm around her shoulders, the other steadying her hand so the flame wouldn't touch her dress. The candlelight painted his face gold. They froze like that, close, breath mixing with the smell of rain. "Thank you," Evelyn said, stepping back, cheeks hot. The flame flickered between them. "I'll check the breaker," Michael said, voice low. The lights came on soon after and everything looked normal again. But something new had been born in the quiet. It was not loud. It was not wild. It was a small feeling with careful feet. Evelyn fought it. Michael fought it. They both lost sleep. The next week, Pastor Daniel left for a month-long crusade tour. 4 cities in 4 weeks. He kissed Evelyn's forehead and said, "Pray for me. When I get back we will watch the sunset for a whole hour." She nodded, smiling the way you smile when you want to believe a promise. The house grew too quiet. The TV talked to nobody. The clock clicked like a slow drip. Evelyn tried to fill the silence with music. She baked bread and gave half to the neighbor. She wrote letters she did not send. She prayed. She read the story of Hannah and cried again. Michael kept to himself even more. He did his chores and then went to his small room over the garage. He called his mother and told her he was fine. He told himself boundaries are like fences. You build them once and then you check the gates every morning. One afternoon, Evelyn came home from the grocery store with too many bags. She tried to carry them all to feel strong. A bag broke. Cans rolled across the kitchen floor. She laughed at herself, but the laugh turned into a small sob that surprised her. Michael rushed in and knelt to gather the cans. He looked up. Their eyes met. He saw how tired she was. She saw how gentle he was. "Please," he said, "let me help." Something that should have stayed a kind moment stretched too far. Neither of them meant to cross a line. But a line is a thin thing when two hearts are hungry for care. They did not plan anything. They did not speak big words. It happened like a slip on rain-wet tiles, sudden, shameful, and quiet. When it was over, there was only the sound of both of them breathing and the soft thud of a heart learning it had done something it could not undo. "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. "I'm sorry," Michael said. They both agreed to say nothing. They promised to be careful. They decided to carry their guilt like stones in their pockets, heavy reminders to walk straight. They thought time would cover it like dust. But time has eyes. 2 weeks later, Evelyn felt a change. She was often tired. She looked at the calendar and counted days. She sat in the bathroom and stared at 2 pink lines that looked like small roads crossing. She covered her mouth with both hands. She cried, not loud, not soft, just steady tears that tasted like salt and fear. She tried to call her husband. His phone was off. He was on a stage somewhere, praying for strangers. She wrote him a message, "Please call me. It's important." She did not press send. She erased it. She wrote another, "I miss you." That was true but not the truth she needed to tell. At the clinic, the nurse asked for an emergency contact. Evelyn stared at the form. Her husband was 30,000 feet in the sky between flights. The church secretary would panic and call everyone. The only person nearby who drove, who kept calm, who would not talk was Michael. She wrote his name. Her hand shook. "This is just for safety," she told herself. "It means nothing." At the lab window, a woman from the church recognized her. "Evelyn, how are you?" She spoke with bright eyes and quick hands. She looked down and noticed the form. "Oh, Michael works in your house, right? That's nice of him." Her smile was normal. But by evening a gossip page posted a blind story, famous pastor's wife seen at clinic with house help as emergency contact. Is the church okay? There was a photo taken from far away. It was blurry but the comments were sharp. The news didn't reach Pastor Daniel right away. He was in another city, then on a plane, then in a car. He arrived home in a swirl of hugs and plans. The church was preparing for a building fund dinner. Testimony Sunday was set for the next week. People whispered, "We heard good news for Pastor's family." The whispers moved like wind under a door. Evelyn tried to speak to her husband. She started 3 times at breakfast and stopped 3 times when his phone rang. "We'll talk tonight," he said, tapping his calendar. "I want to hear everything." Night came late. He fell asleep with his phone in his hand. Evelyn watched him for a long time, her heart full of love and fear at the same time. The dinner was bright and grand. People clapped for big donations. Pastor Daniel thanked donors and told stories of miracles he'd seen. He reached for Evelyn's hand again and again, and each time her heart beat like a drum of war. On Sunday morning the church was packed. News had traveled. "A testimony is coming," people said. "Something big." The cameras were ready. The choir sang a song about joy coming in the morning. The morning had come, but joy was still on the road. Pastor Daniel called his wife to the stage. "Family," he said, "our waiting season has ended. My wife has something to share." Evelyn stepped up. The lights were hot. Her mouth was dry. She thought of 100 kind things her husband had done for strangers and one unkind thing he had done without meaning to. He had left her alone again and again. That did not excuse her sin, but it was the road that led there. She said the words, "I am pregnant." The church danced. She held up a hand and the music slowed. "There is more," she said, and told the truth that burned her lips on the way out. "The father is Michael." Now we return to that moment where we began, to the heavy silence that fell. Pastor Daniel stood like a statue, eyes glassy, lips pressed together. He looked at Michael, who had stood up without meaning to. Michael's face held only one thing: responsibility. He did not run. He did not argue. He did not speak. An elder rose, pointing. "Ushers, remove that man," he said. "Please don't," Evelyn begged into the microphone. "Do not hurt him. If you blame anyone, blame me too." Two ushers moved toward Michael. People murmured. Phones were still recording. The siren outside grew louder, close now, red and blue spilling through the stained glass like broken rainbows. Pastor Daniel finally moved. He took one step, then another, toward the edge of the stage. He raised a hand, not to strike but to speak. "Stop," he said, voice rough. "Nobody touch him." His chest rose and fell too fast. He pointed at the media booth. "Cut the live stream," he ordered. "Now." "We can't," a tech called back, voice cracking. It froze. "It's still pushing to the platform." Something in the crowd snapped. People shouted. Some cried. A few prayed out loud. A camera fell from a tripod and hit the floor with a heavy thud. The ushers hesitated, then backed away from Michael. For a second it seemed like the room might settle. It did not. A man in the back, a blogger who lived on trouble like fish live on water, stood on a chair and yelled, "Check the clinic record." The emergency contact was the boy. Murmurs turned into a wave. The wave rushed forward and words became stones again. Michael lifted both hands. "This is my fault," he said, voice steady but shaking. "Please do not harm her." Pastor Daniel placed a hand over his heart as if trying to hold something inside his chest. His eyes rolled for a moment. Evelyn saw his face go pale. She saw his knees soften. "Daniel," she cried. He swayed. He fell. The microphone screamed with feedback as it hit the floor. People gasped and surged, then stopped, unsure whether to run to their pastor or run from the storm this moment was calling. The red and blue lights outside painted the ceiling. The siren was right at the door now. Somewhere a child started to cry. And in that slice of chaos, everything that looked solid, the marriage, the church, the good name, shook like a tree in heavy wind. Where are you watching from today? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading them. And if you want more, tap subscribe, like this video, and share it with a friend who loves powerful stories. Your support helps this series continue. The sound in the church turned into ocean noise, big and wild and coming from every side. Pastor Daniel lay on the red carpet at the foot of the stage. His eyes were closed. His chest moved but not steady. People shouted the name of Jesus. Others screamed for an ambulance. A few just cried, their hands over their mouths, as if holding words inside would make the world go back to normal. Evelyn dropped to her knees beside her husband. "Daniel," she said, touching his cheek with shaking fingers. His skin felt cold and damp. "Please open your eyes." Her voice broke into little pieces. Michael pushed through the crowd. He took off his jacket and folded it to make a cushion for the pastor's head. "Give him air," he said, calm but firm. "Please step back." The ushers formed a circle, moving people away. Someone cracked a window. Another turned off the stage lights so the heat would not beat down on him. The doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher, their faces set and quick. The siren outside screamed once, then cut off. One medic knelt by Daniel, checked his pulse, checked his eyes, and spoke in short, clear words to her partner. Wires and stickers appeared like magic. A small machine beeped. A mask covered his nose and mouth. The beeps became steadier. People sighed, a small soft sound like a room taking a breath together. "Has he ever fainted before?" the medic asked, looking up at Evelyn. "No," Evelyn said, feeling the truth stick in her throat. "He's been very tired." "Tired how?" "Always on the move," Michael answered because Evelyn couldn't. "Travel, meetings, no sleep." The medic nodded. "We're taking him now." She looked at the crowd. "Please clear a path." The stretcher moved. The church split open into a hallway made of people. Phones were still up. Some filmed with hands that shook. Others lowered their phones, shame on their faces now. As the paramedics passed, a child reached out and touched the sheet, then pulled his hand back, scared of the weight of grown-up things. "Michael," Evelyn said, her eyes on the stretcher but her hand catching his sleeve. "Please come." Her voice fell away. "Ma'am, are you family?" the medic asked. I'm his wife, she said, the words heavy now, full of love and failure. Ride with us, the medic said. You, she pointed at Michael, follow in another car. The doors slammed. The siren screamed again, and the ambulance leaped forward like a scared animal. Michael ran to the church car. Grace, the church secretary, small and sharp like a pencil, slid into the passenger seat. I'm coming, she said, already calling ahead. We'll need the pastor's file. We'll need a private room. We'll need, she kept listing needs as if making a list could control the storm. They reached the hospital in minutes that felt like hours. The ambulance backed into the emergency bay. Nurses and doctors took Pastor Daniel inside. They moved fast without being loud. Michael parked and jogged in with Grace. He found Evelyn standing by the wall, her hands twisting a tissue into white strings. A nurse with kind eyes took Evelyn's arm. He's stable, she said. We're running tests. He's breathing on his own. Can I see him? In a few minutes. Grace squeezed Evelyn's shoulder. Breathe, she said. In and out. She turned to Michael. And you? She stopped herself. Her mouth pressed into a tight line. She looked like she wanted to blame him, then remembered the stretcher and the tubes and swallowed the blame for later. Thank you for driving, she said instead, the words tasting sour but true. The waiting room felt cold and too bright. A TV in the corner talked about a storm in another state. A vending machine hummed next to a line of chairs. People sat with the same look, the look of someone waiting to hear if their life would stay the same or change forever. Michael sat 2 chairs away from Evelyn. He kept his hands still in his lap. He stared at the floor tiles as if they were a map he could read. He took a slow breath and counted to 5. He had learned that trick from his mother. When the heart runs, make it walk, she had said. Grace sat on the other side of Evelyn, her phone in her hand, messages coming like rain. The live stream cut late, she said. It's everywhere now. She turned the screen for a second. A headline ran across the bright rectangle. Famous pastor faints after wife claims pregnancy by house worker, live. The comments moved too quickly to read. Hearts and angry faces flowed under the words like fish. Evelyn closed her eyes. I did not want it like this, she whispered. I wanted to tell him in our kitchen, with the kettle singing and the window open. Grace's voice softened. Why did you say it at the altar? Because lies grow teeth when you feed them, Evelyn said. And I was tired of being bitten. Grace nodded slowly, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just holding the words in the space so they wouldn't fall and break. Okay, she said. Okay. A doctor walked in, the kind of person whose face told stories for a living. Mrs. Hawkins? He asked. Evelyn jumped up. Yes. Your husband is awake, the doctor said. He is exhausted and dehydrated. His heart is under stress. No heart attack, thank God. But we need to keep him for monitoring. He can see you for a few minutes. Evelyn grabbed Michael's sleeve again without thinking, then let go. I'm sorry, she said, stepping back, eyes wet. Thank you for being here. Michael nodded once. Go, he said. Grace stood too. I'll handle calls, she said. We'll need a statement. Something with truth and quiet in it. No fire. Evelyn followed the doctor down a hall that smelled like bleach and hope. She walked into a small room where machines hummed. Daniel lay there, pale under the bright blanket. His eyes opened when he heard her. The look in them held 100 things. Love, pain, shock, questions, memories of late-night laughter, the sound of rain on the window, the color of the kitchen tiles, the day they said, I do, the day she said, I am. Hey, he said, voice rough, a smile trying to be born and failing. Hey, she said, stepping to the bed, not sure if she was allowed to touch his hand. She put her fingers on the sheet, not on his skin. I'm sorry, she said, the words too small for the size of the wound. He looked at her for a long breath. Is it true? He asked. Not angry. Not soft. Just a man trying to stand up in an earthquake. She nodded. Yes. He closed his eyes. The machines kept their steady beat. When he opened them again, there was water in them that did not fall. Why there? He asked. Why then? Why like that? Because I couldn't find you in the quiet places, she said. Only in the loud ones. He swallowed. That is on me, he said. I left you alone with mountains. He turned his head toward the window. A bird landed on the sill, looked in, then flew away. We will need truth, he said after a moment, and we will need mercy. I don't know how to hold both. But we must try. She nodded, tears running now. I will tell the truth, she said. Even if it costs me. He looked at her belly, then back at her face. We will do the right thing, he said. But I need time to learn what the right thing is. He closed his eyes again, tired. Please ask Michael not to run. I don't think he will. But tell him I said so. I will, she whispered. A nurse stepped in. Time, she said gently. He needs rest. Evelyn leaned closer, wanting to touch his forehead, then stopping her hand in the air. She walked back down the hall. Her legs felt like wood. She found Michael where she had left him, sitting straight, eyes on the floor. He's awake, she said. Thank God, Michael said quietly. He says please don't run, Evelyn whispered. Michael gave a small dry laugh that had no joy in it. I was taught to stand when trouble comes, he said. Even when my knees want to bend. He looked up. I will not run. Grace stood and handed Evelyn a bottle of water. Drink, she said like a mother. To Michael she said, the board wants to meet. They're already calling. Some are angry. Some are pretending not to be angry. Some are writing long holy texts with sharp ends. Where? Michael asked. At the church, Grace said. But you shouldn't walk into that room yet. She looked out the window. And you shouldn't walk outside either. Why? Evelyn asked. Because the story has legs, Grace said. And it ran ahead of us. They all stepped closer to the window. Down below, the hospital entrance had changed. 2 local news vans had arrived. A couple of bloggers had their cameras out, talking fast to their lenses. A group of church members stood in a knot, half praying, half arguing. A man held up a big handwritten sign, Tell the Truth. Another held a sign that said, God loves broken people. Between those 2 signs was the whole world, it seemed. Michael pulled back from the glass. I can go talk, he said. Tell them I take the blame. Do not do that now, Grace said quickly. Anything you say will be chopped into pieces and served cold. She rubbed her forehead. We need a plan. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her pocket. A number she didn't know. She let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. She turned it off. I want to hide, she said. Not yet, Grace answered. But we can sit in a quieter room. She walked to the nurse's station and, with the soft power of someone who keeps the office running, found a small family room with 2 chairs, a couch, and a pot of old coffee. Sit, she ordered gently. They sat. The room was quiet except for the clock. Tick, tick, tick. Time seemed to walk slower on purpose, dragging its feet like a sad child. Michael stared at his hands. He had always liked his hands. They were strong and useful. Now they looked like tools that had broken something delicate. I need to speak to the police, he said, surprising himself. To say everything. To face whatever comes. Evelyn looked at him with eyes that had been kind for so long they did not know how to be anything else. You have a good heart, she said. I wish I had guarded it better. The door opened. A tall man in a suit stepped in without knocking. He had the serious face of someone who could sell you peace of mind on a payment plan. I'm Martin Cole, he said. Church legal counsel. The board sent me. He gave a nod at Michael. You need to leave this floor. Now. Why? Grace asked, her voice already bristling. Because the board is protecting the church, Martin said, as if reading from a card. This gentleman's presence threatens that. Evelyn stood small but firm. Martin, stop. He is not a threat. He helped Daniel. He is staying. Martin's eyes slid to Evelyn's face, then away. Mrs. Hawkins, with respect, you are not the board. He turned to Michael. Sir, I advise you to go home and wait. We will contact you. Michael stood slowly. He met Martin's eyes, and in his there was no heat, only a steady river. I will not hide, he said. But I will go to a place where no one will fight. Grace put herself between the 2 men like a thin wall. Martin, if you push him out into that crowd, you will light a match, she said. Is that your plan? Martin's jaw worked. He softened his tone. I'm trying to prevent harm, he said. To him and to the church. Then stop making this a scene, Grace snapped, then breathed out, smoothing her voice. Please. Martin looked tired in a way that a nap wouldn't fix. Fine, he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The hospital security wants to move everyone anyway. There are too many people downstairs. The police are on the way to keep order. The police? Evelyn asked, her chest tightening. For crowd control, Martin said quickly. That's all. They waited again. A nurse came and told them Pastor Daniel was resting. A chaplain stopped by, offering a prayer in a voice that felt like warm tea. Grace answered 3 calls with short polite words, then put her phone face down. The clock on the wall kept walking. At last, a soft knock came and a different nurse peered in. "Mrs. Hawkins, you can see him again," she said. Evelyn stood. Her legs felt less like wood now, more like branches that could bend without breaking. "I'll be quick," she said to Michael. "He asked for truth and mercy. I will try to bring both." Michael nodded. Evelyn left the room with the nurse. Grace sank back on the couch, closed her eyes and whispered, "God, give us wisdom thicker than fear." Michael walked to the window again and looked down. The parking lot looked like a map of small storms. People held phones like torches. Some faces were angry, some sad, some hungry for a story to tell at dinner. A police cruiser pulled in. Another followed. Lights flashed without sirens. 2 officers stepped out. They spoke to security. Security pointed up, toward the floor where Michael stood. One officer wrote something on a pad. The other spoke into his radio. Michael felt a calm move through him, the way calm sometimes comes when you have run out of places to run. He turned as the door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stood there now, polite but made of iron. The taller one nodded. "Are you Michael Rivers?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Michael said, standing straight. "We need you to come with us," the officer said. "We have to take your statement. There's also a safety concern downstairs. Folks are heated." Grace jumped up. "Officers, can this wait?" she asked. "The pastor." "We're not here for the pastor," the officer said gently. "We're here to keep things from getting worse. We'll bring him back after questions." Michael looked at Grace, then at the officer. "I will come," he said, his voice steady, his fear folded and placed in his pocket with the other stones. "But please do not frighten the sick." "We'll use the staff elevator," the officer said. He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, sir, thank you for helping your boss." They stepped into the hall. As they moved toward the elevator, wheels squeaked. A bed rolled by, nurses guiding it. It was Pastor Daniel, awake, eyes wide. He saw Michael with the officers. He tried to lift his hand as if to say wait, as if to say stop, as if to say mercy. The nurse put a gentle hand on his shoulder. The bed turned the corner. The door of the elevator slid open with a soft ding. The officer took out a pair of handcuffs. "It's protocol," he said, not unkind. "With this much public heat, we can't walk you through the lobby without them." Grace's voice cracked. "Please?" "It's okay," Michael said, holding out his hands, palms up, like a man showing he had nothing to hide. The metal closed around his wrists with a bright, final sound. Evelyn stepped out of Daniel's room just in time to see Michael being led away, the cuffs shining under the hospital lights, her mouth opening for a word that would not come. And somewhere below, a camera lens caught the moment and made it bigger than the truth. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your city and country in the comments. I'm reading every one. If you want more, tap subscribe, like this video and share it with a friend who loves powerful stories. Your support helps this series continue. The flashing red and blue lights outside the hospital painted the night sky like a battlefield. Michael stepped into the back of the police car, his wrists locked in cold steel. The officers didn't push him, but the cuffs themselves were heavy enough to feel like a punishment before a sentence. Cameras clicked from every angle. Shouts rose from the crowd. "There he is," someone yelled. "Shame," cried another. But just as many voices called different words, "Leave him alone," and "God forgives." The church members were divided, some with their hands raised in prayer, others with their phones raised high, hungry for proof of scandal. The weight of judgment pressed down like thunderclouds. Inside the hospital room, Evelyn clutched the curtain by the window, her body trembling. She had caught only a glimpse of Michael being led away in cuffs, but the sight burned into her heart. She turned toward her husband's bed. Pastor Daniel lay propped against pillows, his breathing more even now, though his eyes carried storms. "Daniel?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "They're taking him. Like a criminal." Her husband's chest rose and fell. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. "And what do you want me to do, Evelyn? Stand up and tell the world I failed you? Tell them I was never home when you needed me?" His tone wasn't loud, but it cut sharp. Tears spilled down Evelyn's cheeks. "No. I just want you to see. He isn't a monster. This happened because I was lonely. Because I needed you, Daniel. And you weren't here." Silence filled the room except for the steady beep of the monitor. Daniel's eyes softened, but his pride, heavy as stone, wouldn't let his lips speak mercy yet. He turned his face toward the ceiling and whispered, "God, give me strength not to hate the people I should love." At the station, Michael sat in a bare room with a metal table, the cuffs now removed. A single bulb swung overhead, casting long shadows. The younger officer placed a recorder on the table. State your name. Michael Rivers, he answered calmly. The officer nodded. Do you understand why you're here? Michael met his eyes. Because I am accused of fathering the pastor's wife's child. The older officer leaned forward, his hands folded. It's not just that, son. The crowd outside is angry. Some think you seduced her on purpose. Others think she lied. Either way, it's fire. And the board of the church, they want to make sure the fire doesn't burn their house down. Michael breathed in slow. I will tell the truth. All of it. I never planned this. I never wanted this. I only tried to be kind. And kindness turned into something else. The older officer studied him. His eyes weren't unkind, but they were steady. Son, kindness is dangerous when hearts are fragile. Michael lowered his head. I know. Back at the hospital, Grace paced the hallway, phone to her ear, whispering fast into the receiver. We can't let the board paint him as the devil. The truth will come out either way. If we hide it, it'll come uglier. She listened, frowning. No, I won't push Evelyn into silence. Not after everything. She deserves her own voice. She hung up and turned to Evelyn, who sat with her hands clasped, eyes hollow. They're already spinning it, Grace said bitterly. Some of the elders are saying you've been bewitched. Others claim Michael has been plotting this for months to disgrace the church. Evelyn shook her head. That isn't true. He never asked me for anything. He never even looked at me wrong until that night. I believe you, Grace said firmly. But the truth doesn't matter as much as the story people choose to believe. A nurse came in then, breaking the tension. Mrs. Hawkins, your husband is asking for you. Evelyn rose slowly, walking into the room with feet that felt like they were carrying chains. Daniel looked at her, his face pale but his eyes clear. Evelyn, he said softly, you must choose between protecting Michael or protecting me. You cannot do both. Her heart stopped for a beat. I don't want to choose, she whispered. You must, he said, his voice breaking even as he forced it steady. Because the board, the press, the world, they will not let us both survive this storm. Only one can walk out whole. The room spun. Evelyn clutched the bed rail, her chest heaving. She loved her husband. She also cared for Michael. But the child inside her child, was an anchor she couldn't escape. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The door swung open before she could answer. Grace's face was pale, her phone in her hand. Evelyn. Daniel, you need to see this. She turned the screen toward them. A video played, grainy, shaky, clearly filmed on a phone. It showed Michael being led in cuffs through the hospital parking lot. The crowd was screaming. But what caught the eye wasn't Michael. It was the person shouting from the crowd, loud enough for the whole video to hear. I saw them. I saw Michael leave her room late at night. More than once. The video froze on Evelyn's shocked face as she gasped at the screen. And in that instant, the lie became a weapon sharper than the truth itself. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. I love hearing from you. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves dramatic stories. Stay tuned for more. It's about to get even more shocking. The video spread faster than fire on dry grass. By morning, every gossip blog, every local news site, and even some national outlets carried the shaky footage of Michael in cuffs and the loud voice in the crowd screaming, I saw them. Evelyn sat in the hospital room with her phone buzzing nonstop. She had turned off notifications, but still, the screen lit up every minute with new messages. Some were from church members demanding the truth. Others were strangers spewing insults. A few were quiet voices of support, but their whispers drowned beneath the shouting. Pastor Daniel lay in bed, propped against pillows. His breathing was steadier, but the weight in his eyes had not lifted. He scrolled through his own phone, jaw clenched. He read the comments aloud, voice heavy. So-called man of God can't keep his own house. His thumb moved. His wife a Jezebel, his home a circus. He set the phone down with trembling fingers. They don't care about us, Evelyn. They care about the story. Evelyn's tears had run dry in the night, but her face still showed the tracks. She reached for his hand, but he pulled it back, folding both his hands tightly on his lap. Daniel, she whispered, I know I failed you. I know I hurt you. But please don't let the world decide how we heal. For a long time Daniel said nothing. Then he whispered, You've left me standing naked in front of them, Evelyn. And I don't know how to cover myself again. At the station, Michael sat in the interrogation room, head bowed. He had given his statement, every detail of it, from the first day he worked in the parsonage to the night everything changed. The officers had listened quietly, writing notes, asking small questions. Now the younger officer leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Michael, do you realize this can be painted as abuse of power? You were in a position of service. People will say you took advantage. Michael lifted his head slowly, his voice steady. I never took advantage. She was lonely. I was kind when I should have kept distance. I failed. But I never forced her. Never. The older officer studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed. Truth doesn't always matter more than perception. The board will push for charges. They want someone to blame. Michael folded his hands together. Then let it be me. Better me than her. The younger officer frowned. Why would you say that? She was the one. Because she carries a child, Michael interrupted softly. And because she is his wife. Her fall will break more hearts than mine. The room grew silent. The officers exchanged a glance. The younger one muttered under his breath, You're either the bravest fool I've ever seen, or the kindest. Meanwhile at the hospital, Grace stormed into Daniel's room, her hair tied back in a messy knot, eyes blazing. She slapped a folded newspaper onto the side table. The headline screamed, Scandal in the Sanctuary, Pastor's Wife Expecting House Worker's Child. They're eating this alive, Grace spat. And the board just voted to suspend you, Daniel. Effective immediately. Daniel's head snapped up. Suspend me? Yes, Grace said bitterly. Until they can investigate. Which really means until the storm dies down and they can decide whether to save their faces or yours. Evelyn gasped, clutching the blanket. But the church. Grace cut her off. The church will survive. But the two of you? You're bleeding in front of wolves. And Michael? They want him in chains longer than necessary. Daniel's fists clenched. I built that church with prayer, sweat, and sacrifice. And now they throw me aside like old shoes? Grace's voice softened. Daniel, this is bigger than the pulpit now. It's about mercy. How you handle this storm will decide whether people remember you for shame or for grace. Daniel stared at her, breathing hard. His pride warred with his faith, each side pulling his heart in opposite directions. That night, Evelyn slipped out of the hospital room, unable to sleep. She walked down the quiet hallway, her shoes whispering against the tiles. She found a small chapel tucked near the maternity wing. Inside the light was dim. A single candle flickered near the cross. She sank to her knees on the wooden floor. Her hands shook as she pressed them together. God, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't even know what to pray for. Forgive me? Save me? Protect my child? Heal my husband? Free Michael? I don't know where to begin. Tears poured freely now. I thought kindness would save me. But kindness became sin. And now, I don't know if anyone will ever look at me without shame again. Her sobs echoed in the empty room. She bowed her head against the pew. If there's a way through this storm, please, show me. And in that quiet chapel, she didn't hear an answer. But she felt one, like a small warmth in her chest, telling her the storm wouldn't last forever, even if the night still had hours to go. Morning broke with a new shock. Grace's phone buzzed wildly as she entered Daniel's room. Her face was pale, eyes wide. There's a warrant, she whispered. For Michael? Evelyn asked, heart skipping. Grace shook her head slowly, her voice low but trembling. No. For you, Evelyn. Someone filed a report claiming, you pressured him. That he's the victim, not you. The room froze. Daniel's mouth fell open. Evelyn staggered back, nearly collapsing against the wall. What? She gasped. That's not true. That's not true. Grace grabbed her shoulders. I know. But perception is poison, Evelyn. And someone just poured it into your cup. Evelyn's knees buckled. Daniel reached out instinctively, catching her hand before she fell. For the first time since the scandal broke, he held her hand tight. His voice was low, fierce. They are coming for you, he said. But I will not let them take you alone. Where are you watching from right now? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves powerful stories. Stay tuned for more, because the next twist will leave you speechless. The knock at the hospital door was heavy and final. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, their presence filling the small room with cold air. One of them, tall with a square jaw, held a folder. The other rested his hand on his belt, eyes shifting between Daniel, Evelyn, and Grace. Mrs. Hawkins? The tall officer asked. Evelyn's voice trembled. Yes. He unfolded the paper. We have a warrant for your questioning. There's an allegation that you pressured your house worker into a relationship against his will. His tone was steady, but even in his professional calmness, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth. No, no, that isn't true, she cried. Her knees weakened beneath her. Daniel stood from his bed, ripping the four from his arm despite the nurse's protests. You will not take her like she's a criminal, he barked, his voice echoing with the old fire that used to shake pulpits. She is my wife. The younger officer stepped forward carefully. Sir, we are not here to harm her. We only need her statement. But the allegations are serious. Grace moved between them, eyes sharp. Who filed this? The officer glanced at his folder. Anonymous source. But the report is detailed. Too detailed to ignore. Daniel clenched his fists. Anonymous cowards, he spat. Hiding behind shadows to destroy us. Evelyn shook her head violently, tears streaming down. They're twisting it. They're twisting everything. I never forced him. Never. She looked at the officers desperately. Michael would tell you that. He would. The tall officer sighed. We'll confirm that. But we have to take you in, ma'am? At the station, Michael sat alone in his cell. His mind replayed every word he had said in the interrogation room. He had confessed his guilt in crossing a line but had sworn Evelyn was innocent of coercion. The officers had believed him somewhat, but belief was not enough in a world hungry for scandal. The bars clanged and the older officer from before stepped up. Michael, new development, he said. There's a claim against her now. Says you were the victim. Michael shot to his feet. That's a lie. His voice thundered through the small room. I told you the truth. I was not forced. I made the mistake as much as she did. The officer raised a hand. Calm down. I believe you. But the law moves with paperwork, not always with truth. And paperwork says we have to investigate her now too. Michael gripped the bars, his knuckles white. Then let me testify. Let me say it again. I will not let her carry this burden. Back at the hospital, Evelyn sat in a wheelchair pushed by the younger officer. Her wrists were not cuffed, but the shame felt the same. The halls buzzed with whispers as nurses and patients peeked out of rooms. Cameras flashed outside the hospital doors, catching every second of her exit. Daniel followed despite the doctor's protests, his hospital gown hidden under a hastily thrown-on coat. Grace walked beside him, jaw set. Reporters shouted questions. Pastor Daniel, do you forgive your wife? Evelyn, did you seduce your house worker? Is this the end of your ministry? Flashes blinded them as they stepped into the waiting police car. Daniel held Evelyn's hand tightly. Keep your head high, he whispered. Even when they spit, keep it high. Inside the interrogation room, Evelyn sat across from two detectives. Her hands trembled on the table. I did not force him, she repeated for the third time. He is younger, yes, but he is not a child. We were both wrong. But it was not that. One detective leaned forward. Then why would someone accuse you? Who would gain from this? Evelyn swallowed hard. Her mind raced. Faces of church board members flickered in her thoughts. Angry elders, jealous ministers, even bitter neighbors. But one face lingered, the church treasurer, Mr. Cole, whose voice had been sharpest during the last board meeting. I don't know, she whispered, though in her heart she suspected. The door opened suddenly. The older officer from Michael's case entered, holding a file. Detectives, you'll want to hear this, he said. Michael Rivers just gave a sworn statement. He insists Evelyn Hawkins never coerced him. Says if charges are pressed, they should be against him alone. The room went silent. Evelyn's tears spilled freely now. He did that? The detective sighed. That complicates things. His testimony carries weight. The second detective muttered, or it makes it look like they're protecting each other. Back at the parsonage, the board gathered in the living room, speaking in angry, hushed tones. Mr. Cole, the treasurer, paced back and forth. This scandal will drown us if we don't cut them off, he declared. The pastor, his wife, the house worker, dead weight. The ministry must survive. Another elder shook his head. But Daniel has built this house. Can we truly abandon him? Cole slammed his palm on the table. The world has already judged him. If we stand too close, we burn too. None of them noticed the young church janitor listening just outside the door, phone in his hand, recording every word. At the station, Evelyn was finally released on bail, Grace signing the papers with a shaking hand. Daniel met her at the door, pale but standing strong. We walked together, he said, slipping his hand into hers. As they stepped outside, the crowd was waiting again, angry, divided, loud. Reporters shoved microphones forward. And then a new voice rose above the noise. The janitor's video, leaked online only an hour earlier, now played loudly on someone's phone speaker. Cut them off, Dead weight. The ministry must survive. Gasps rippled through the crowd. For the first time since the scandal began, suspicion shifted, not just toward Evelyn or Michael, but toward the church board itself. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing from
the crowd outside
and
the
don't
police
forget to
station
like this
turned
video,
restless as the
subscribe, and
janitors
share it
leaked
with a friend who
recordings
loves like
powerful
wildfire.
stories.
People
Stay
huddled
tuned for
around
more.
phones, playing
The
the
twist
audio
coming
over
next
and
will
over.
shake the entire
Cut them
church
off
to its
Dead
foundation.
weight. The ministry must survive. The words of Mr. Cole, the church treasurer, rang in the air like a curse. For months, church members had trusted him to guard their offerings and guide financial decisions. Now many saw his words as betrayal, proof that the board cared more about image and money than truth or mercy. They're throwing our pastor to the wolves, a woman shouted. They don't care about people, only power, yelled another. The police officers outside tightened their line, ready to control the crowd if it turned violent. Inside the station, Evelyn sat with Daniel and Grace in a small waiting room. Her hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. The video of Cole's voice had already gone viral. People were demanding his resignation. But mixed among those posts were still cruel comments aimed at her, each one a knife. Daniel squeezed her hand. His face was pale, but his voice carried strength. The tide is shifting, Evelyn. The same people who cursed us yesterday are beginning to question the board today. Evelyn shook her head. But the shame is still mine, Daniel. Even if they turn against Cole, they will never forget what I confessed. Grace leaned forward, her eyes fierce. Maybe. But shame loses power when truth is louder. Michael's statement is already protecting you. And now this recording. God works even in storms. Meanwhile, in his small cell, Michael prayed. His knees pressed against the cold floor. Lord, he whispered, do not let my mistake destroy them. Let me carry the weight if it will give them a chance to heal. His voice cracked, but his eyes stayed closed. The door opened and the older officer stepped in. Michael, things are changing. That recording about the board? It's everywhere. People are starting to see this isn't just about you and Evelyn. It's about corruption too. Michael lifted his head slowly. Does that mean they will release her? The officer nodded. She's already out on bail. And if this fire keeps burning, the board won't have the same grip on this case. Michael bowed his head again. Then maybe God still writes mercy into broken lines. The next Sunday the church gates were crowded. News crews parked their vans outside. Members gathered in knots, some praying, some arguing, some holding signs that read, Truth before image and we stand with Daniel. Inside the sanctuary the atmosphere was thick with tension. The board had planned an emergency meeting, but many members refused to attend until Daniel himself spoke. For the first time in years the pulpit sat empty, the microphone turned off. Then without warning the side door opened. Daniel walked in, supported by Evelyn on one side and Grace on the other. He was still weak from his collapse, but his steps were steady, his presence commanding. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel climbed the steps to the pulpit, gripping it with both hands. His voice was hoarse but every word carried weight. My brothers and sisters, he began, you have heard much about me, my wife, and our home. Some of it is true. Some of it is twisted. But all of it has brought shame to the house of God. He paused, his chest rising. I will not stand here and pretend I am blameless. I failed my wife. I gave my time to the world and left her heart starving at home. That failure opened the door to sin. Gasps moved through the crowd. Evelyn lowered her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. But hear me, Daniel continued, his voice trembling. Do not cast her as a monster. Do not paint Michael as a demon. They are guilty of weakness, yes, but I am guilty too. And I will not allow wolves in suits to cut them off while they hide their own sins in shadows. The congregation erupted, some in applause, others in anger. A man shouted, Then step down, Pastor. Another cried, No, this is repentance. Let him lead us still. Before the uproar could swell, the sanctuary doors banged open. Police officers entered, followed by reporters and flashing cameras. Behind them was Mr. Cole, the treasurer, his face pale as stone. An officer announced loudly, Martin Cole, you are under arrest for embezzlement of church funds and obstruction of justice. The room froze. Gasps turned into shouts as Cole was led away in handcuffs. His eyes darted around, but no one came to defend him. Daniel gripped the pulpit tighter, his voice rising above the chaos. You see now. The devil wanted us to tear each other apart while the true thieves ate at the table. No more. His fist slammed against the wood. No more lies. No more masks. This house will stand on truth or it will not stand at all. Evelyn looked at him with wide eyes, her heart pounding. For the first time since her confession, she saw not only her husband but the leader the people needed. And yet, deep inside she wondered, was this the beginning of healing, or the spark of an even greater fire? Where are you watching from right now? I'd love to hear. Drop your city and country in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and share this story with a friend who enjoys powerful drama. Stay tuned for more. The storm is far from over and the next blow will cut even deeper. The sanctuary buzzed with noise long after Mr. Cole was dragged out in cuffs. Half the congregation shouted prayers of thanksgiving, the other half whispered about the scandal still hanging over Daniel, Evelyn, and Michael. The church had never felt more divided. Daniel stood at the pulpit, his body trembling, sweat shining on his forehead. He lifted one hand for silence. Slowly the voices died down. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, faces that had once adored him, now torn between love, judgment, and confusion. I will not resign, Daniel said firmly, his voice ringing through the hall. Not because I am proud but because this church belongs to God, not to men in suits, not to gossip, not to money. His chest rose as he drew in a breath. But I also will not stand here pretending my house is whole when it is not. My wife and I must face the consequences of our sins together. And Michael must be given a chance to speak his truth, without fear of being crushed. A ripple of murmurs spread. Some nodded in agreement. Others frowned, arms crossed. Suddenly, a woman rose from the second row, Mrs. Palmer, one of the longest-serving elders. Her silver hair gleamed under the lights. Her voice shook as she spoke. Pastor, I have loved this church for 40 years. I have watched you grow, preach, and serve. But I cannot lie, your confession wounds me. I ask the question every member here asks. How can we follow a shepherd whose house is broken? Daniel's lips trembled, but before he could answer, Evelyn stood beside him. Her hands shook as she gripped the pulpit. Because brokenness does not make him less of a shepherd, she said, her voice raw. It makes him human. And if you throw him away for being human, then none of you deserve the grace you claim to preach. The crowd erupted, some clapping loudly, others shaking their heads in disgust. A man shouted, "You betrayed him." Another woman yelled back, "She told the truth when she could have lied." That is courage. Grace stepped into the aisle, raising her hands. Enough, she snapped. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had kept the church standing behind the scenes for years. If you tear each other apart, there will be no church left. Do you want the enemy to laugh at us? Then keep fighting. But if you want God to restore us, then let truth work its course. The murmurs quieted, though tension still crackled in the air. Meanwhile, in his holding cell, Michael pressed his palms together in prayer. The sound of distant chanting from outside drifted into the room, some people calling for his release, others demanding his punishment. The older officer entered again, holding a slip of paper. "You've been summoned," the officer said. "The congregation wants to hear from you. You'll be escorted to the church under guard." Michael's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because your name is at the center of this storm," the officer said. "And if you don't speak, they'll keep filling the silence with lies." Michael rose to his feet slowly. "Then let me go. I will speak. Not for myself but for truth." Back at the church, Daniel steadied himself on the pulpit. He could feel his strength waning, but his resolve was iron. Evelyn sat in the front pew, her face pale, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Grace whispered with a group of deacons, trying to keep the service from collapsing into chaos. The sanctuary doors creaked open. 2 officers walked in, escorting Michael. The sight of him in plain clothes, his hands free but his face somber, sent a ripple through the congregation. "Michael Rivers," the officer announced, "is here to address the congregation." The sanctuary erupted again. Some shouted curses, others clapped, and a few wept openly. Michael stepped forward, his tall frame steady, though his eyes betrayed the weight he carried. He stood at the pulpit beside Daniel, who nodded once in grim respect. Michael's voice was quiet at first, but it carried. "I am not here to clear my name. I am here to tell the truth. I failed. I crossed a line I should never have crossed. I was shown kindness and I gave back temptation. I will carry that sin for the rest of my life." He paused, scanning the crowd. Some glared, others leaned in waiting. "But hear me," he continued louder now. "Evelyn Hawkins did not coerce me. She did not force me. We both fell. If you wish to stone someone, then stone me. I am the servant. Let the blame fall on me, not on the woman who was left alone by the man she trusted most." Gasps filled the room. Evelyn covered her face with her hands, sobbing silently. Daniel's jaw clenched as his pride and pain warred with the undeniable truth. Michael's voice trembled now. But before you raise your stones, remember this: we are all capable of falling. If you stand today and say you cannot fall, then you are already lying to yourselves. For a moment, silence reigned. The congregation sat frozen, caught between anger and conviction. Then from the back a young man's voice shouted, "He's right. If God forgave David, he can forgive them." Others began to murmur agreement. A few clapped. But just as hope flickered, a loud bang echoed through the sanctuary, the sound of the church's back door slamming open. Everyone turned. A group of reporters rushed in, cameras rolling, microphones thrust forward. And leading them was a man no one expected to see: Reverend Jameson, Daniel's longtime rival from another church across town. He strode down the aisle with a smug smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "this scandal proves what I have preached all along. Pastor Daniel Hawkins is unfit to lead. His wife is unfaithful, his house worker is corrupt. But he spread his arms dramatically, "I stand with a clean house and a clean name." The congregation erupted into shouts again, the fragile balance shattered. Daniel gripped the pulpit tighter, his eyes narrowing. Evelyn gasped. Michael clenched his fists. Grace's face darkened with fury. And just like that, the storm grew darker, because this wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was about to become a battle for the very soul of the church. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I love hearing from you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves powerful drama. Stay tuned for more. The battle lines are drawn and the fight will leave scars. The sanctuary became a battlefield of voices. Some shouted, "Sit down, Jameson," while others cried, "He's right, Daniel has failed us." Reporters' cameras flashed like lightning, catching every heated face, every trembling hand. Reverend Jameson walked confidently to the front, his polished shoes echoing against the tiled floor. His suit was crisp, his Bible clutched in one hand like a weapon. He turned toward the cameras instead of the congregation. "You see," he declared, "the Hawkins household is a house built on sand. And when the storm came, it fell. The word of God is clear: a leader must manage his household well, or he is not fit to lead God's people." Some in the crowd nodded. Others jeered. Daniel rose from his chair beside the pulpit. Though his body was weak, his eyes burned with fire. "Jameson," he said, voice hoarse but firm, "you came here not to restore but to gloat. That is not the work of a shepherd but of a wolf." Gasps rippled through the church. Jameson smirked. "And what are you then, Daniel? A shepherd who lets his wife fall into the arms of his servant." He raised his Bible high. "Your sin disqualifies you." Evelyn stood suddenly, her body trembling. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. "Enough," she cried. The sanctuary hushed, surprised at her boldness. "Yes, I sinned. I confessed it before the world. But do not use my failure as a ladder to climb higher in your pride, Jameson. That is not godliness, it is ambition dressed in scripture." The room erupted, some cheering for Evelyn, others hissing in disapproval. Michael stepped forward, standing between Daniel and Jameson. His deep voice rumbled through the chaos. "If you want to cast stones, cast them at me. I will not allow this church to tear itself apart over me. I am ready to leave, ready to face judgment, ready for whatever consequences come. But this fighting, it is not of God." Jameson sneered. "How noble. But it is too late, the world already knows your shame." Grace, who had been silent until now, suddenly strode to the pulpit. Her small frame carried the authority of thunder. She snatched the microphone from Jameson's hand. "Shut your mouth," she snapped. The crowd gasped. Reporters leaned in closer. Grace's voice rose. "I have worked in this church for 20 years. I have seen Pastor Daniel feed the poor when no one was watching. I have seen Evelyn weep with women who lost their children. I have seen Michael fix the roof of widows without asking for a penny. They are broken, yes. But they are not hypocrites. Hypocrites are those who pretend to be perfect while hiding their corruption in dark corners." She pointed a finger at Jameson. "Like you." The congregation buzzed with shock. Jameson laughed bitterly. "And what proof do you have of that, Grace?" Her eyes flashed. "More than enough." She pulled her phone from her pocket. "Because while you were so eager to call this house unclean, you forgot the skeletons rattling in your own closet." She pressed play. The speakers filled with an audio recording, Jameson's voice unmistakable. "Divert 10% of the offering to my private account. The members won't notice. They're too busy praying for miracles." The church exploded in cries and gasps. Reporters surged forward. Cameras zoomed in. Jameson's smug face drained of color. Daniel gripped the pulpit with both hands, his voice shaking but strong. This house may be broken, but we are not liars. Truth will heal us. Lies will bury you, Jameson. Police officers, still standing near the doors, exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward, pulling out a pair of cuffs. Reverend Jameson, we need you to come with us. The sanctuary became a whirlwind, some shouting, others cheering, reporters jostling for the best shot. Evelyn collapsed into tears, her body shaking with both relief and fear. Michael bent down, steadying her with his strong hands. Daniel raised his arm for silence, his face pale but resolute. My family and I have sinned, but we will walk in truth. If you choose to leave this church, I will not stop you. But if you choose to stay, then stay, not for me, but for God. Because no man, not Daniel, not Michael, not Jameson, can carry the weight of this house alone. The sanctuary fell quiet. People shifted in their seats, torn between pain and hope. And just as the silence settled, one of the reporters shouted, "If you truly stand for truth, Pastor, then answer this. What will you do about your wife's unborn child?" The question cut through the room like lightning. All eyes turned to Evelyn, whose hands instinctively went to her belly. Daniel's face tightened, his jaw clenched. Michael lowered his eyes to the ground. And the church held its breath, waiting for an answer that could either heal or destroy. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I'd love to know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves suspenseful stories. Stay tuned for more, because the answer to that question will shake every soul in the room. The question hung in the sanctuary like smoke after a fire. What will you do about your wife's unborn child? Reporters leaned forward, microphones outstretched. Congregants held their breath, their eyes bouncing between Daniel, Evelyn, and Michael. Even the police officers at the back stood still, as if the answer would decide whether peace or chaos would follow. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. His hands trembled on the pulpit. He looked at Evelyn, her head bowed, hands clutching her belly, and then at Michael, whose eyes were lowered in shame. For a long moment, silence ruled. Finally, Daniel spoke. His voice was hoarse, heavy, but steady. That child is innocent. It did not ask to be born in scandal. It did not sin. It will not carry the punishment for our failures. The room buzzed. Some clapped in approval. Others hissed. A woman cried out, "But Pastor, how can you raise another man's child?" Daniel closed his eyes, then opened them again, tears glistening. Because mercy is heavier than pride. If I cast this child away, I cast away my own humanity. I will not do it. Evelyn gasped, her tears flowing freely now. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, unable to speak. Michael's chest heaved, his fists clenched. But before relief could settle, another voice rose from the crowd. A tall man in a dark suit, one of the younger board members, stepped into the aisle. "You say you will raise this child, Pastor, but what about your congregation? What about the thousands who trusted you, who followed you? Do they deserve to carry this shame too?" The sanctuary rippled with murmurs. He continued, his voice louder, sharper. "This is not just about your marriage. This is about the church's name in this city. Sponsors are pulling out. Donations have dropped. The reputation of this ministry is sinking. We cannot survive if you stay." Gasps echoed. The board member pointed toward Michael. "And as for him, he should be excommunicated at once. A servant who violated his master's house? That is unforgivable." Michael lifted his head at last, his voice deep and steady. "I have never denied my guilt. If exile is the price, I will bear it. But do not think throwing me away will heal this house. Brokenness cannot be mended by scapegoats, it must be mended by truth." The congregation roared with mixed emotions, applause, shouts, cries. Some shouted, "Forgive them." Others cried, "Cast them out." Evelyn finally rose to her feet, trembling but fierce. She turned to face the crowd. "Do you want me to disappear? Do you want me to leave this church, this city, this marriage? Say it now. If my presence poisons your faith, I will go." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "But remember this, when you drive away the broken, you drive away the very people God sent His Son to die for." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of Evelyn's sobs. Grace rushed forward, standing beside her. "She's right," Grace said, her voice strong. "The church is not a museum for saints, it is a hospital for sinners. If you forget that, then you are already lost." Suddenly, from the back of the sanctuary, an old man rose. He was frail, leaning on a cane, but his voice carried weight. "I have been here since this church was built," he said. "I have seen leaders come and go. I have seen holy men fall, and I have seen sinners rise. Today I choose mercy." He raised his cane. "If Pastor Daniel says he will stand, then I will stand with him." A cheer rose from one side of the sanctuary. Others remained silent, frowning, uncertain. The church was splitting before their eyes. Then chaos erupted again, because one of the reporters, emboldened by the heat of the moment, shouted a question that no one was ready for. "Pastor Daniel, if you are so committed to mercy, will you allow Michael to stay in your house, under the same roof as the child?" The room went deathly still. All eyes turned to Daniel, whose face tightened as though the weight of the world had just been dropped onto his shoulders. Evelyn froze, her hand gripping the pew. Michael closed his eyes, bracing for the answer. Daniel opened his mouth, then stopped. His chest rose and fell as he struggled to breathe through the storm in his soul. The silence stretched, long and unbearable. And then his voice broke the air, "If that is the cost of mercy?" But before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the church. The sanctuary doors burst open again, this time not with reporters or police, but with two women rushing inside. One of them clutched a stack of papers. Her voice rang out as she shouted, "Stop everything! I have proof that will change this whole story. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments, I'd love to know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves suspenseful stories." The entire congregation turned toward the back as the two women rushed down the aisle. The taller one clutched a folder stuffed with papers. Her voice rang out like a bell. "I have proof that will change this entire story." Reporters scrambled forward, cameras flashing. Ushers tried to hold the women back, but the taller one shook them off. She reached the pulpit, breathing hard, and slammed the folder onto the wood. "My name is Sandra," she said, her eyes fierce. "I work at the clinic where Mrs. Hawkins came for her test. And these," she held up the papers, shaking them in the air, "are the real results." The sanctuary gasped as she opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet. "The child is not Michael's," she cried. "The child belongs to Pastor Daniel." Evelyn staggered backward, her knees almost giving way. "What?" she whispered, eyes wide. Daniel caught her before she fell, his own mouth open in shock. Sandra laid the paper flat on the pulpit. The first report was switched. Someone tampered with the records. The DNA sample was altered. But the truth is here, the father is her husband. The congregation erupted into chaos. Cheers, sobs, shouts of disbelief. Some wept openly, others shouted apologies. Grace snatched the paper and scanned it, her eyes wide. "She's telling the truth," Grace said, her voice trembling. "This test proves Daniel is the father." Daniel's chest heaved as tears filled his eyes. He turned to Evelyn, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Evelyn, after all these years of waiting," his voice broke. "It's ours?" She nodded through her sobs. "It's ours, Daniel. It's always been ours." They embraced, their tears mingling, the congregation clapping and crying all at once. Even Michael, standing off to the side, smiled through the shame that had hung on him for weeks. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Thank you, God." But the storm was not over yet. The second woman stepped forward, her eyes burning with anger. "And I can tell you who tried to bury this truth," she said. "It was Martin Cole, the treasurer." Gasps filled the room again. Reporters snapped pictures like thunder. The woman pulled out another sheet. "Emails," she explained. "He bribed a lab worker to swap the samples. He wanted to ruin Pastor Daniel so the board could take control of the church's funds." Daniel's jaw clenched. Grace's face turned red with fury. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth again. At that moment, the police officers who had arrested Cole earlier re-entered the sanctuary. One of them raised his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we already have Cole in custody. And with this new evidence, the charges against Pastor Daniel's wife and Michael Rivers are void." The crowd exploded, cheering, clapping, hugging each other. People who had shouted curses only days ago now shouted blessings. Michael stepped to the pulpit, his tall frame steady. "I owe all of you an apology," he said. "I carried shame that did not belong to me and I let you believe lies. But if this story proves anything, it is that truth cannot stay buried forever." He looked at Daniel and Evelyn, tears in his eyes. "I am sorry for the pain my weakness caused." Daniel walked to him slowly, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "You stood in the fire for us, Michael," he said softly. "That is not weakness, That is loyalty. You will always have a place in this house. Evelyn smiled through her tears, nodding. Grace stepped forward, lifting the microphone. Let this day be remembered not as the day scandal destroyed us, but as the day truth and mercy saved us. The congregation erupted into praise. Some fell to their knees in prayer. Others hugged. The cameras rolled, broadcasting redemption to the same world that had once celebrated their fall. As the noise rose around them, Daniel wrapped an arm around Evelyn, placing his other hand gently on her stomach. Our child, he whispered. Our miracle. Evelyn leaned against him, smiling through tears. God didn't forget us after all. Michael closed his eyes, relief washing over him like rain. For the first time in weeks, the weight on his shoulders lifted. And as the choir began to sing softly in the background, the sanctuary was filled not with scandal, but with hope. The storm had ended. The truth had triumphed. And the Hawkins family, though scarred, would rise again. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I'd love to know. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who loves powerful stories. Thank you for staying through this journey, because sometimes, even in the darkest storms, truth shines brightest.